My cheating wife completely panicked and begged for forgiveness, but I made sure she knew she would face the consequences of her actions. It's been about 7 months since I first discovered my soon-to-be ex-wife was cheating on me. At the time, I went through every stage of emotional destruction, heartache, denial, unbearable pain, and those humiliating pick-me attempts. I fell into a dark place and stayed there for longer than I cared to admit. I never confronted her back then. I was too broken to even find the words. Part of me wondered if she somehow knew I was aware of her betrayal, but if she did, she clearly didn't care. At least, that's what I told myself. Somewhere around 2 to 3 months ago, something inside me just shut off. I was done with her, done with our marriage, and done pretending I could fix something she shattered. I completely checked out of the relationship and started quietly preparing for divorce. I stopped caring about appearances and started focusing on my own future. I avoided her as much as possible. When she was home, I found excuses to leave the house. On the rare occasions we spoke, I refused to engage beyond a cold yes, no, maybe, or I don't know. It was like she was invisible to me. I didn't even bother hiding the bills from the divorce lawyer. I left them right out in the open, almost daring her to say something. Even the kids could tell what was happening. They eventually asked me what was going on, so I gave them the talk. I sat them down and said, "We both love you very much, but sometimes grown-ups just can't be together anymore. It's not your fault." My wife was actually in the room when I told them this, silent as a statue. She didn't comment or push back, so I took her silence as a kind of agreement. Fast forward to a few days ago, when something unexpected happened. I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, a girl I knew back in school. Let's call her Monica, because honestly, she looks like Monica Bellucci, and that's not an exaggeration. Back then, there had always been something between us. A spark. Chemistry that we couldn't quite act on. We flirted, got a little too close sometimes, but nothing ever happened because I was too young, shy, and completely clueless. Then her family moved away, and I never got the chance to see where things could have gone. I hadn't thought about Monica in years, until I saw her again. The second we started talking, the tension between us was even more electric than I remembered. Conversation flowed like water, natural and effortless. And then, she surprised me by asking me out. I explained the situation with my wife, how I wasn't going to cross any lines or cheat. I told her I wanted to be officially separated before I started seeing anyone, and she respected that completely. She gave me her number, smiled, and said, "Call me when you're ready." Then she added that she'd never been married and was genuinely excited to get to know me again. I won't lie, I felt the same. That encounter lit a fire under me. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a reason to really move on with my life. I was so happy, I practically floated home that evening. I sat in the living room, grinning like an absolute lunatic, waiting for my wife to come home. When she walked in, I asked her to sit down. I finally laid everything out. I told her I'd known about her cheating for a long time. I told her I assumed she knew I knew, especially since I'd been completely checked out of the relationship for months. And I pointed out how she didn't seem to care that I no longer did. Then I dropped the bombshell. I told her I wanted to start dating and officially move forward with my life. I ended with, "All things considered, it's time for us to get divorced. Don't you agree?" Her reaction completely blindsided me. Instead of nodding or walking away relieved, she collapsed. I've never seen someone unravel like that before. She didn't just cry, she made this sound, this gut-wrenching, soul-shattering noise, like she was falling apart at the seams. She sputtered excuses through the sobbing, begging for a second chance, claiming the affair didn't mean anything, and that we could fix everything with counseling. I just stared at her, stunned. I had fully expected her to welcome this moment, to jump at the chance to leave me and be with the guy she cheated with. So I asked her, "If he wasn't more important to you, then why did you go to him in the first place?" You knew this would destroy us. You can't possibly be that naive, can you? Her tears didn't sway me. I told her flat out. If you thought our marriage or our family could be saved, the time to do something about it was 7 months ago, before you had the affair. It's too late now. What we had is broken, and there's no putting it back together. She tried blaming problems in our marriage, but I cut her off. If there were issues, you should have told me. I'm not a mind reader. How was I supposed to fix something I didn't even know was broken? At that point, I realized something important. Whatever explanation or excuse she gave didn't matter anymore. I was already gone, and there was no coming back from this. Since she started this affair, I can only assume she believed something was missing, something so wrong in our marriage that she thought it couldn't be fixed by just talking to me. It had to be so big, so irreparable in her mind, that she was willing to blow up our family and let our children grow up in a broken home. Otherwise, why do it? I sat her down and explained this as calmly and clearly as I could. I told her there was no way to undo what she'd done, the 7 months she spent sneaking around with another man, the trust she destroyed, and the suffering she caused me. There was no going back. Her actions led me to this place of complete indifference, or, honestly, something closer to hatred. The only reason I'm staying civil at this point is for the sake of co-parenting our kids in the future. I laid it all out for her. You couldn't have cared about me, I said. No one who even likes another person would put them through this kind of pain, let alone someone they claim to love. Your actions scream louder than your words ever could, so saying I love you now means absolutely nothing. You betrayed me. That's what matters. At this point, she completely unraveled. She was crying, shaking, and her words became so incoherent I couldn't make any sense of what she was trying to say. It was just a jumbled, messy stream of excuses and desperation. I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't about to be the one comforting her, not after everything. So I called her sister. When her sister arrived, I explained what had happened and told her to take my wife away. She agreed and got her out of the house. I'm not exaggerating when I say I felt relief the second they were gone, like I could finally breathe for the first time in months. But now I can't help asking myself, what did she think would happen? She must have known this affair would blow up her life, right? There's no way she's so naive that she believed these choices wouldn't lead to a broken family and divorce. She's beautiful, she's smart, and up until this affair, I thought our marriage was great. I've come to terms with the fact that life changes. I've accepted it and moved on, so why is she suddenly acting like she loves me and wants to fix everything? It doesn't make any sense. What could possibly be motivating her to create this drama now? There's no way she thinks reconciliation is on the table. Is this some kind of ploy? And if so, what's her angle? I just can't figure it out. It's not like I don't have leverage. I have a mountain of evidence proving she cheated. Where I live, a European country, that means she gets nothing, no alimony, nothing. Maybe that's what this is about. Could she be scared I'll expose her for what she did? Her affair partner is married too, so maybe she's afraid I'll tell his wife? I just can't wrap my head around it. None of this adds up. Anyway, I needed to get this out of my system. I thought putting it all down might help me make sense of it, but honestly, I'm just as confused now as when I started typing. Update: my STBXW is confusing the hell out of me. First of all, thank you to everyone who's shared their thoughts and support. It's been overwhelming, in both good and eye-opening ways. I haven't been able to respond to everyone, but I've tried my best to read all your messages. I originally posted 3 days after the conversation with my soon-to-be ex-wife, and at that point, I'd hardly slept. I was so out of it, I passed out at my desk reading comments, only to wake up the next morning with a lovely keyboard pattern imprinted on my face, but with a much clearer mind. Once I was thinking straight, I decided I needed to organize everything. I grabbed a stack of papers, made some lists, and stuck them on the wall like I was solving a mystery. Each sheet had its own headline, our kids, how to handle interactions with my wife, my marriage, Monica, questions to ask my wife, etc. It sounds dramatic, but I needed to see everything laid out to process it. My main goal was to figure out what my priorities were, what principles I wanted to stick to, and what outcomes I was actually hoping to achieve. Then I went through each point and asked myself, is this meaningful? Is it even realistic? The kids. They are my number one priority, end of story. I decided to focus even more on helping them through this. I'll arrange additional individual counseling, family therapy, and more quality time together. I'm planning trips and activities to create new memories with them, memories of love, stability, and reassurance. I also want to loop in the rest of my side of the family. I want the kids surrounded by love and support from every angle. On top of that, I'll talk to their teachers, coaches, and anyone else in their lives to make sure their support system is as strong as possible. They shouldn't have to carry any more weight than they already are. Another difficult decision I made was to get an STI test for myself, and honestly, to schedule DNA testing for the kids. Even writing that makes me uncomfortable, but I need to know for their sake and mine. What if they aren't biologically mine? They have a right to know their medical history, and if there's someone else out there, they may want answers one day. Plus, if I ignore this now, what will they think of me later? I truly hope I'm just being paranoid and that the tests confirm they're mine. Until I have those results, I know I'll be stressed out of my mind. I also spoke to their therapists alone first, and then we sat down as a family. My wife wasn't there for this. I needed it to just be about me and the kids. We explained what's happening in terms they could understand and answered as many questions as they needed to ask. Over and over again I told them that I'm their dad, I love them more than anything, and I will always, always be there for them, no matter what. I repeated that like a mantra because I want them to believe it down to their bones. My marriage. After sitting with my thoughts, I came to a pretty clear conclusion. I can never trust my wife again, and without trust, there is no relationship. Period. I also realized that I don't love her anymore, not the person she is now. My love for her once took up a huge part of me, but she killed that when she chose to have an affair. This whole experience has completely shifted how I see her. It's not that I can't love her again, it's that I don't want to. The thought of trying to rebuild anything with her feels like dread and discomfort. My mind, my heart, and even my body all scream the same thing: get out. At this point, divorce feels inevitable, and I don't want to drag it out. The faster we can finalize this and move on with our lives, the better for everyone. I don't hate her in the sense that I wish her harm, but I no longer want her to be part of my life beyond co-parenting the kids. Monica. I spent a lot of time thinking about Monica and the advice I received here about jumping into a new relationship. I had my concerns. Maybe starting something so soon isn't the best idea. Maybe I shouldn't bring her into this mess, because let's face it, my life is a disaster zone right now. I shared all of this with her, and she listened. She disagreed, though. She said life is messy, and sometimes you have to take risks when real opportunities present themselves. Honestly, I respect her perspective. I learned more about her too. Turns out, she was engaged once, but her fiancé passed away unexpectedly in a work accident almost 5 years ago. Losing him devastated her, and although she's been on a few dates since, she hasn't found anyone she's connected with. From her point of view, life is short, and if we both feel something, it's worth exploring, even if the timing isn't perfect. That said, I told her I don't want to start anything until after the divorce is official. I don't want there to be any ambiguity, and I refuse to cheat, even if I'm technically married in name only at this point. She completely understood and respected my decision. I also brought up how it might look to other people. If we suddenly became a couple, it would be easy for my STDXW to spin a narrative and frame Monica as the homewrecker. I don't want to give her that ammunition, and Monica agreed. She said she'd rather wait and deal with this the right way. So that's where I am now. I've got a plan for the kids, a clear understanding of where I stand with my wife and marriage, and a path forward with Monica, when the time is right. I feel clearer and more in control than I have in months, but it's still a long road ahead. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time. I don't want to rush into anything with Monica. She agreed, and we decided to wait until after my legal separation is finalized before doing anything more. I feel incredibly drawn to her, but even this phone call we shared felt like it was skirting the edge of an emotional affair. That doesn't sit right with me. I won't contact her again until everything is sorted legally. We agreed I'd focus on getting my affairs in order, and when I'm ready, we'll see where life takes us. When it came to planning my next meeting with my wife, I sat down and thought hard about who I want to be in this situation. I wrote down a few principles to guide me, principles to remind me of the man I was before all of this mess. I decided I needed to stay calm and avoid cruelty. The point of this meeting wasn't to settle scores or cause more damage, it was to move forward as best as possible, for our kids. Co-parenting will only work if we handle things maturely, and I refuse to let my anger define how I approach this. I also prepared a list of questions for her, things I needed to know to understand why she did this and what she's thinking about the future. I didn't plan on being manipulative or deceitful. I wasn't going to give her false hope for reconciliation just to secure a postnup or to gain some kind of advantage in the divorce. I've decided to act as fairly as possible. I'll split the assets 50-50, and we'll share custody equally. As much as she has hurt me, I refuse to stoop to her level. I want to be able to look back on my actions, today, tomorrow, and 20 years from now, and know I acted with integrity. Yes, I hate what she did to me, to our children, and to everything we built together. But I can't carry hate in my heart forever. I'll need to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine, so I can let go and truly move on. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but up until the affair, I thought it was pretty close. We made love almost every day, spent quality time together, hardly ever argued, and willingly sacrificed for each other. I was completely open with her, and believed she was open with me too. But now I see her actions prove otherwise. The meeting. When Saturday came, I went to meet her. Her sister had warned me that she wasn't in a good place, and she wasn't wrong. When I saw her, I almost didn't recognize her. My wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, looked absolutely awful. Her eyes were bloodshot and swollen, her face sunken, her hair a disheveled mess. She looked smaller than I remembered, like she had imploded into herself. It was obvious she hadn't been sleeping or eating much. She was shaking as we sat down, almost uncontrollably. Surprisingly, I felt calm. I felt sympathy for her obvious pain, but not the kind of sympathy you feel for a spouse. It was more detached, like I'd feel watching a sad scene in a movie. It sounds strange, but at that moment, I realized I really don't love her anymore. I sat quietly, waiting for her to collect herself. She tried to start talking several times but kept breaking down, her sobs uncontrollable and raw. I've seen her cry before, but never like this. People can fake tears, sure, but no one can fake the look of someone who's been crying nonstop for days, puffy eyes, soul-crushing sobs, and yeah, giant snot bubbles. Eventually the dam burst, and words started pouring out. Every second word was an apology. She didn't try to excuse herself or shift the blame to me, which I'll admit surprised me. Her sister, who had joined us, was crying too, and she jumped in now and then to berate her. That's when something unexpected came out. Apparently, my wife's sister had cheated on her fiancé about a year ago, and it cost her everything. I had no idea about this. Hearing that explained a lot. My wife admitted that her sister's actions triggered something in her, a kind of midlife crisis. She started thinking about cheating constantly, obsessing over what it would feel like. Then she developed a crush or infatuation with this guy, and in her words, couldn't help herself. She said she convinced herself I'd never find out. She thought no one would get hurt, and that it was a purely selfish thing, something she deserved. She was apparently very happy in our marriage, but at the time, she rationalized that she could have this fling, and that life would simply go back to normal. In her mind, she believed I would somehow support her choice if I knew how happy it made her. It sounds insane now, but I think she really convinced herself of that narrative. She thought the affair would pass, like a phase, and that we'd just return to our happy family life, none the wiser. Hearing her side was a lot. I still can't fully wrap my head around it. She was crying, her sister was crying, and I just sat there, calm and detached, listening. It didn't change how I feel. I'm done. I'm relieved to know there's no big secret or underlying problem with me or our marriage. It was just her own selfishness and inability to control her impulses. Still, knowing that doesn't make it easier to forgive her or erase the damage she's done. It does, however, make me more certain than ever that moving on is the right choice. She had no idea I'd found out about her affair until I started to check out of our marriage. That's when she finally began to question what was going on. I learned she ended things with her affair partner about a month and a half ago. Apparently, the buzz of the relationship had started to wear off. To prove it, she handed me her phone and showed me that she had blocked him. Out of curiosity, I unblocked the guy, and sure enough, messages from the past month and a half started pouring in. He had been trying to reconnect with her. It turns out that during this time, she had been making attempts to re-engage me in our marriage. I hadn't noticed, or maybe I had and just didn't care. I was so far removed from her at that point that I wanted nothing to do with her. Up until I sat her down for that final conversation, she still believed we'd find a way back to each other and end up stronger than ever. But when she looked into my eyes that day, I think she finally understood this was the end of the line. The reality of what she had done hit her like a ton of bricks. I tried to ask her questions to make sense of it all, questions I knew deep down wouldn't have satisfying answers. What gave you the right to do this to me? To us? To our kids? In the end, it boiled down to nothing but selfishness on her part. And like so many people here pointed out, I realized I would never get the answers I was looking for, because they don't exist. There is no acceptable reason for cheating, so there will never be an acceptable explanation. Strangely, though, I did find some closure in the conversation. I was able to explain, in detail, how badly she had hurt me. I laid out the incredible pain her betrayal had caused me. She listened and accepted that this is her fault, that she is the reason our marriage is broken, and that our children will now grow up in a broken home. Watching her accept that responsibility gave me an odd sense of peace. She had clearly been trying to prepare for this moment. She told me she had been reading everything she could about fixing a marriage after infidelity. She'd even written out a complete timeline of the affair and a detailed confession. She handed it to me, but I didn't even look at it. I gave it straight to my lawyer. Then the begging began. She swore up and down that she would do anything to fix this. I told her I didn't believe her. I don't believe anything she says anymore, I just don't trust her. How can you expect me to come up with a solution for something you broke? I asked. If you were in my shoes, what would you say to that? We went back and forth for a while, but in the end, she admitted that if the roles were reversed, she wouldn't forgive me either. That was the first honest thing she'd said in a long time. I told her I'd taken an STI test and that I was getting a DNA test for the kids. The moment those words came out of my mouth, she completely broke down. For a solid 20 minutes, she sobbed uncontrollably. She insisted, over and over again, that this was the only time she had ever cheated or done anything even remotely out of line. But after more back and forth, she conceded that, again, I had every reason not to believe her. She admitted that if she were me, she'd do the same thing. I also asked her if the affair partner's wife knew. She admitted that she didn't. I told her the AP's wife deserved to know and asked her if she planned to tell her or if I should. Her response? If I tell her, will you consider reconciling or going to marriage counseling? I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her, no. but it would help you regain a tiny shred of respect in my eyes. She promised she would tell the AP's wife and anyone else who needed to know. She even said she'd go to HR at work and confess everything. Again, I told her I didn't believe her. At this point, her promises mean nothing to me. She swore up and down that she would never be with anyone else, that she'd never stop trying to get back together with me, even if it took the rest of her life. I didn't bother responding, it was redundant at that point. In a final desperate attempt, she offered me a one-sided open marriage. She said I could have access to all her communication, she'd be available to me 24/7, anything to prove her loyalty. I stopped her right there. I told her I'd already spoken to Monica, but I was waiting. I don't want to cheat even now. I'm not interested in an open marriage because I don't want to hurt someone the way you hurt me. I don't want to become someone who has to constantly spy, monitor, and distrust their partner. That's not a healthy relationship, and I won't live like that. I also made it clear that I'm not interested in intimacy without a deeper emotional connection. If I wanted mechanical release, I can handle that on my own. I don't need a partner for that. By the end of the conversation, I felt drained but firm in my decision. I think for the first time, she finally understood the gravity of what she'd done, and that there's no coming back from it. At this point, we were all completely drained. We'd been at it for over 5 hours, and my wife had been crying the entire time, ranging from barely holding it together to full-on, gut-wrenching sobbing that was almost horrifying to witness. It was clear we weren't going to get any further. There was nothing left to say. I told her, as plainly as I could, that the love I once had for her had died. I didn't recognize the person she had become, and I didn't want the life we'd built together anymore, not after what she'd done. Our family, I said, died by your hand, and I'm going through with the divorce. I told her there was no undoing this. The only way to avoid this outcome would have been to never start the affair in the first place, 7 months ago. I don't want our marriage back, I continued. I don't want you back. I don't want any more pain. I suggested we go no contact for a while, to get some space, some perspective. I also told her that I had already filed for divorce and that my mind was made up. There was no changing it. I offered to attend family therapy strictly for the purpose of co-parenting, but beyond that, I didn't even want to see her. Saying all of this out loud was one of the most painful things I've ever done. She was sobbing uncontrollably at this point, mumbling, "No, no, 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 please no. Please no," over and over again. It was a desperate, broken kind of pleading, like she couldn't believe this was happening. When I stood up to leave, she started shaking violently, and then, out of nowhere, she got this massive, almost explosive nosebleed. She reached out toward me, like she was trying to hold on to something, but before she could take a step, she passed out cold. I barely managed to catch her before she hit the floor. I drove her and her sister to the ER and stayed until I knew she would be okay. Once the doctor reassured me that it wasn't life-threatening, I left. Last night and today, my STBXW started telling everyone what she had done. I didn't ask her to do it, but I suppose she felt like she needed to. This morning, the affair partner's wife called me. She'd heard the truth from my wife and wanted confirmation that it was real. I sent her copies of some of the evidence. She told me she'd been suspecting something for a long time but never had anything solid. After seeing the proof, she kicked her husband out. She wants to meet up and look through more of the evidence. She said she has a lot on her mind and a lot she needs to say. She even asked if we could talk on the phone. I don't know if I can take that on right now. The thought of dealing with her pain, on top of my own, feels like too much. I told her, maybe later. I freely admit that I feel like absolute garbage. I haven't been able to sleep, and cracks are starting to form in my resolve. I know I need to stay strong, I have to stay strong, but it's harder than I ever imagined. Why do I feel so guilty? Why do I feel responsible for trying to fix something that she broke? My mind keeps running in circles, trying to answer questions I know don't have answers. Some of my wife's friends and relatives have been calling me up to curse me out. They're saying I should give her a second chance, that I should try to save our marriage. But in my mind, all I can think is, why drag out the pain? Better to rip off the bandage now so we can all start to heal and build new lives. So that's it. No dramatic revenge, no satisfying resolve, no sense of peace, just more pain for all of us. My mind feels like it's in a very dark place right now, and I'm not sure what to do. I feel like I'm stuck in this fog, and I don't know how to pull myself out. For now, I'm just trying to take it one moment at a time.